Welcome into a Tuesday edition of Daily Faceoff Live. Tyler Yaremchuk and Carter Hutton with you, streaming on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. And as always, brought to you by Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. And if we're talking slow and lagging, it could be the hotel Wi-Fi or it could be the too many beers we had last night, Huts.
Yeah, we had to go there. We should have got joining rooms, or we should have got a room with bunk beds or something, buddy. This has been the trip for the ages. Game 7, Jays huge win. That was awesome last night. I had a lot of fun. And we're nursing it a bit today, but rightfully so. We were drinking with the rest of Canada as the Jays pulled off a huge win, and they're going to the World Series.
Yeah, they're going to the World Series for the first time in my life. We'll talk a little bit more about that in garbage time. Jeff Marek is going to join us. I got a fun hypothetical I want to throw the way of Mr. Marek, and I think I'm curious to see what some people in the chat say about it as well. So that's all coming up in our big segment, but a couple of things to knock off the list before we get there. Let's take a look back at last night's action, and the one sort of marquee game was the battle of the undefeateds. It was Carolina against Vegas, the two teams who had not lost yet in regulation, and it was the Golden Knights coming away with a win. They keep a 0 in that middle column, handing Carolina their first loss of the season. And we'll talk a little bit about Adin Hill, but first, I mean, they've kind of been the story so far early on. This Vegas team is just so damn good.
Yeah, they're so good, and they're so deep, and everything that's gone on with this team, offensively, and, I guess the question marks coming in, how is Marner going to fit? Who's going to be their scorer? Dorofeyev has been unbelievable. Jack Eichel, gets the big contract, haven't had a setback. There's a little bit of depth in that lineup, I think, with their maturity. Stone's out for a bit, which is going to be interesting how they platoon that moving forward. And then the Carter Hart situation, right? They lose Adin Hill. When is he going to be ready? Akira Schmid came in last night and played very good in relief against a very good Carolina Hurricanes team. And, I guess it's just another home ice dominance. This is a team that is so good at home. They set the table. And again, it's a great start to the season in a tough Pacific division for the Vegas Golden Knights.
So the Adin Hill injury certainly didn't look good. It was only 10 minutes into the game and he leaves. I think this is already the second time this season he's left a game with an injury. So there's probably some reason to be concerned, and where this is probably going to be tough if you're Vegas. And again, like, that didn't look good. Sometimes if it's like a hard collision, you can sit there and be like, okay, maybe the guy's just shaken up and he's fine. But when it's something like this, where again, a simple movement and he's grabbing something in his lower body, it's concerning. Carter Hart can't play until December 1 is the date. If you're the Golden Knights and Hill, like, can you trust Akira Schmid? You can't rush Adin Hill back because you don't want to put his long-term health at risk, because you want to win a Stanley Cup this spring.
Yeah, it's worrisome on the reaction, right? So it's a tip play, right? He's shifting to his blocker side and he tries to react quickly the other way. So what worries me is that, like, groin, knee kind of situation, right? Because it's a quick, explosive movement, and you see how he labors definitely on his left side. It's concerning, right? He's a big goalie that doesn't really move well. He's not, like, he's athletic in a sense, like he gets around the crease decent, but he doesn't have a great east-west play. So for him to be immobilized even more isn't a great scene for the Adin Hill for Team Canada, right? This is a guy that's in the conversation. Where does this go? And again, these are injuries of wear and tear. You see these injuries a little earlier in the season when guys aren't fully, adjusted to the grind of the season, and your body has to kind of transform from that summer mode into game mode. So this is worrisome. I think something that you don't want to nag him moving forward, but do they have enough in Akira Schmid in the stopgap to get them through to try to bridge that gap between the December 1st with Carter Hart? Will he be ready? And then the fact that Adin Hill, how long they know he's out for. So yeah, it's a tricky situation for Vegas, but at least they score in bunches and they can support their goaltending.
Yeah, and I mean, again, Schmid's been good this season, so maybe not too much of a reason to even have this big conversation, but I don't know. Still, it's a little worrisome. And yeah, you talk about Carter Hart. Like, if you're holding your breath for Carter Hart to come in on December 1 and just snap in and take the starter's job because Hill's out for, maybe it will be a few months. We're still waiting on an update. Like, I don't know. I don't think you can bank on Carter Hart, who hasn't played an NHL game in a year and a half or almost 2 years, to just slide in and take that job. I want to talk about the flip side of this game, Hutton, the loss for the Carolina Hurricanes, where, again, a lot of overwhelming positives for this Canes team. But one thing that stuck out is a couple of struggles. Nikolai Ehlers and Andrei Svechnikov. Ehlers finally got on the board with an assist yesterday, but you look at Svechnikov, he's -3 on the year, was -2 last night, and look at the minutes. Like, he is sliding way down that depth chart in Carolina. Is this just early season struggles, or do you think Carolina, again, like, the knock on them has always been they do not have star power? They will get through the regular season, they will be a good team, they'll get to the playoffs, and they don't have that game breaker that can push them over the edge. I look at this and like Ehlers was kind of supposed to be one of those guys that would help in that department. Both him and Svechnikov have been, let's put it bluntly, brutal to start.
You got to hope that this is something that they can grow into as the season goes, their leadership group. But the Ehlers one, I'm not as worried about. He's a veteran guy. He's been around a long time, and he can play when it matters most. The Svechnikov one is the one that worries me. Playing under Rod Brind'Amour, a guy who demands it from you every single night, and he's created a culture there where you are accountable, and like their leadership group, whether it's Stahl or Martinook or Slavin, the guys that have been there for a long time that kind of pull this train in that direction, demanded from you. But Svechnikov is a guy that he's just a player that can be on a perimeter and he cannot have that grind. We've seen it so many times with star players like them. Sometimes the Russians can be a little bit softer when it comes to the regular season grind. They're going to be big players when it matters. But what I worry about is the relationship in the room with the head coach, a guy who is on you every single day. And to play Carolina Hurricanes hockey, it gets exhausting after 82 games and guys can check out. So this early in the season is a bit of a message. And we chatted the other day with Stephen Ellis about Blake sliding in on that first power play, taking Svechnikov's spot. And these are guys that want power plays. They want points. That's what keep them going. It'll be interesting to see how he earns his way back into his good books if his game keeps sliding like this, Ty.
Yeah, I'm looking to, because again, last year they made the big splash. They brought in Mikko Rantanen. I know it didn't work, but it showed that this front office was willing to take a swing, and they were honestly kind of moving away from the strategy that they'd had for the last number of seasons. They have one pick in the first 5 rounds of the 2026 draft. It's a second rounder that they got from Dallas when they moved on from the Mikko Rantanen experiment. So again, it's on those guys in the room. You make the big splash, you sign Ehlers. Again, this isn't like a full-on panic kind of thing, but it's a watch list situation for me. We're like, okay, right now it's not good. And you mentioned Brind'Amour too. Like, is Svechnikov the kind of guy who's going to respond well to being thrown in the bottom 6? And what if it goes on for a month? Is it going to get worse? Like, I don't know. I think there's a few reasons to be concerned there. But let's move on and head out west to another really concerning situation. This team will probably come up in the hypothetical that I'm going to ask Jeff Marek later, but the Calgary Flames continued their early season struggles. It is a 2-1 loss to the Winnipeg Jets, where Dustin Wolf was very good. However, Connor Hellebuck was a little bit better, and that Flames offense just, once again, couldn't find the back of the net. Look at that, Huts. They're 7 games in, 1.6 goals per game. And I looked at some of the underlying numbers on Natural Stat Trick. They're generating fine at 5-on-5, but their power play sucks and their shooting percentage is dead last in the league. And I know sometimes you can point to shooting percentage and be like, it's a measure of luck. Like, eventually pucks start going in if you're generating, but this is a Flames team that was close to the bottom of the league last year in shooting percentage. Like, I don't know if this is just bad luck. It might just be a team who sucks at finishing.
Yeah, I think a little bit of both, right? You look at Dustin Wolf's start last year. He came in on an absolute heater. He was 8-3 to start his season. He's 1-5 right now with like an 867 save percentage, right? He was the MVP of this team, right? He was a team that gave up a lot of chances. And again, what did we expect from the Flames last year, right? Like, even when they were in that middle, kind of in a little bit of a playoff on, it was almost like a negative aspect to the team where they were rather like, let's tank a little bit and get some picks. But now, again, they're in this middle where I don't really know which direction they're going in a tough Western Conference. So I think at some point you have to start kind of platooning Devin Cooley out there a little bit more. He played 1 game in Utah. He was very good. Give Dustin Wolf a chance to get his feet underneath him again. And it's not like it's his fault. Like, he played very well last night. And again, for going into the third period, having the lead, Jonathan Toews with a big tip, and then Mark Scheifele on a goal that just can't happen in the third period. It kicks it wide to Kyle Connor. Mark Scheifele drives the net on a 2-on-1, and it's a backdoor tip. And like, that just can't happen in a third period in a tie hockey game if you want to be a winning team. So the Winnipeg Jets are a good team. They know how to get it done. But for the Calgary Flames, it's a little bit worrisome. And I think Dustin Wolf just needs to be protected in his sophomore year here.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you, like, from that goaltending perspective. And, I'm someone who saw this with Stuart Skinner in Edmonton, where you have that first year where you're the bulk starter and you got to play, north of 50 games. And then it's almost like that second season, Huts, that's when like the exhaustion kicks in. Like, I know Skinner was a guy who didn't handle his offseason all that well. He added on a bunch of weight, and again, his season went really long and that was a part of it. But is there something to that sophomore slump where like they threw him right to the, no pun intended, right to the Wolves as a bulk NHL workloads, like true 1A starter? Is there something to, in year 2, you need to manage it a bit better?
I think so. I reflect on my career when you ask me that, and I start thinking about like what gave me sustainability. It was when like the emotional part of my game went away, right? So early in your career, it's easy to play, right? You've been waiting your whole life to play in the NHL. So there's like this emotional onset that comes on when I'm getting a start, it's Saturday night, I'm playing, right? And then all of a sudden you're into your career and the grind is here and you're playing every day and it becomes like just the normal everyday life. This is what you do. So how do you find a way to like rev your game up? And where you do that is in your off-season training and the way you prepare yourself and in your way to compartmentalize the game, which is a tricky one for me to explain other than going through it, where I was able to turn the game off, right? Like if I had a tough game or a good game, 10 minutes after I snapped if I lost, I was mad or I was happy we won. And then you move on with your life, right? You go and for me, I was a family man at that point. Dustin Wolf's a younger guy. But that being said, then all of a sudden, you've put the right like parameters in place for your game to have sustainability. Because if you're emotionally tied to every game, it is exhausting and it's harder for a younger player to learn how to park that, right? It's not that you don't care, but you learn to just care a little less outside of those moments. So I think for Dustin Wolf, that's where he's going to graduate to. The skill is there. It just becomes more of that sustainability of not being so emotionally attached to every game.
Yeah, and listen, again, 1-6 start to the year. That one win came on opening night against the Oilers when, honestly, the Flames got outworked for a lot of that. And I don't want people to be like, oh, you're just dumping on the Flames because whatever. Like, I don't know. I'm looking at this Western Conference where Nashville looks better than they were last year. LA, they'll start to figure it out and get some wins. Edmonton probably won't be down in 7th in the wild card standings all that long. The Ducks are going to take more points off the board. Like, I don't know. It'll get late early in Calgary if they don't start piecing together a couple of victories. They're minus 15 goal differential, not just worst in the West. It is worst in the entire NHL. And speaking of some bottom feeders, that's the first topic for our Pick'em segment today, Hutz. I'm going to give you a question with 2 answers. You got to pick either side. And listen, the San Jose Sharks, we heard Ryan Warsofsky the other day. He actually had to come out. He came out and apologized for his comment saying he'd give up one of his children for a win. I say, you don't need to apologize for a good hyperbole, Ryan Warsofsky. But the Sharks sitting at 0-3-2 on the year. It has not been kind of the early season step forward they were looking for. I want to compare them, though, to a rebuilding team out east in the New York Islanders. Carter Hutton, if you were told you had to take over as GM of one of these two teams, which one do you think you could get into the playoffs faster, the Sharks or the Islanders?
Oh, I think I'd have to go with the Sharks, just with their young talent and where they're at. I think Askarov has a really high upside. I guess I just worry about the star power of the New York Islanders is going to push them over the top. They feel like they just are so still. I know Schaefer's a huge addition. They just still feel like meat and potatoes to me, right? I just don't know where they're going to generate offense. And, for a team that's supposed to be so strong, Ilya Sorokin, he just hasn't really been that good. So I just think the upside to the Sharks is higher. But again, or am I just blinded by the fact that the Sharks kind of had this free pass during this rebuild, right? Like for amount of teams that take a ton of heat, the Sharks kind of have this free pass where they've been losing, but it seems like a lot of fun in San Jose. So I guess I'm on board with the Sharks.
But again, that clock kind of ticks a little bit, right? Like I really do think if by halfway through this year, the Sharks are still brutal and getting their teeth kicked in on a bunch of nights, I think you're going to see that room maybe not be as much fun as it is. You're already seeing it a little bit, I think, with Macklin Celebrini in some of his post games. Like it's not the same kind of tone as last year in San Jose. So I do think, again, they're not going to be in the playoff picture this season. Chicago is the surprise that is lingering around through 2.5 weeks of the season. We'll see how long that run can kind of stay up for. But I don't know, it'd be a tough job taking over for that San Jose team because we've talked about this. When you do the full rip it down to the studs rebuild where all the veterans are gone, like this is the toughest part of it where, okay, the roster's filled with kids. And I know they have Toffoli and okay, they signed Jeff Skinner. He's off to a good start. But this is the tough part here when you need to try to take that step forward in a really, really competitive Western Conference. Second one I got for you, we're going to go out to the East where the Rangers and Bruins both kind of in these weird middling starts to the year. The Bruins, after a great start, have lost 4 in a row all of a sudden. But which one are you more concerned about at this point? The Rangers and the Bruins, the two kind of big bounce back teams in the East.
Oh, I think I'm still more worried about the Rangers. Like the Bruins are worrisome, right? Because they've given up a lot of picks and they are who they are at this point, right? And they're in this kind of medium build. It's more the Rangers were supposed to be good. So it's been more disappointing, I think, because of the lack of offense. Again, last night, they finally got their first goal at home on home ice, MSG against Minnesota, which has been thoroughly disappointing with the captaincy change, right? JT Miller coming in, becoming the captain, Mike Sullivan coming in as the head coach. I guess I felt like there would be a better response from this team with new leadership. You get that new coach bump and you get a captain and a guy that is demanding. So I think the early lack of offense, lack of creativity in the lineup is concerning for a team that we expected. I think when you look at beforehand, a lot of predictions of where they would be, that might be that team in the Metro to bump somebody out and get back in. So for me, the Rangers are a little more concerning just because of the fall from grace that they've had the last few seasons.
All right, let's get to our big segment for today. On Tuesdays, we're joined by Jeff Marek, and it's a segment that is brought to you by Uber Eats. Uber Eats is enabling fans to maximize their fandom all season long with exclusive game day deals on the app. From game day eats to paper plates, if you're hosting, to all the ingredients you need to make your favorite game day dip before, during, or after the game, Uber Eats is assisting every fan's hockey experience all season long. Jeff Marek from The Sheet joins us as he does every Tuesday. Jeff, how you doing?
Should I whisper?
Yes.
Is it one of those days? Should I keep it down a little bit? Were you two gentlemen perhaps overpoured last night at the Blue Jays Mariners game? Should we heavy up on the Advils today? I don't know. Is this like in Hutz? You probably have a couple of stories about this, about practicing guilty or playing guilty. Do guys still do the Vicks Vapor Rub on the chest when they're hungover so the coach can't smell their breath the next morning? Is that still a thing in hockey, Carter Hutton?
That was a go-to. I remember it was early in my career. I was a black ace. I played up with the San Jose Sharks for a bit. Yeah. Mike Ricci came into me right away. He's like, buddy, get the deep cold on right now. Rub it on because we can smell you from a mile away. So that was part of the learning curve for me, and I could use it right now. That's for sure.
Right. All over the upper chest. That was I remember Colby Armstrong told me this one about the Pittsburgh Penguins. It was like Vicks Vapor or cold, whatever. Like it was all on the upper chest. They couldn't smell your breath going around. That's really good. That's really good. I remember Bruce Budreau told me years ago when he knew someone was a little bit banged up the next morning for skate, he would tell the veterans, hey, go over and tell that kid not to come up to me because I don't want to have to make a really uncomfortable situation here. I'm just going to pretend like I don't know what's going on. When you talk about players coaches, that's very much a players coach move. Anyway, morning, guys. How are you guys?
Good morning, indeed. You have a new podcast with Bruce Budreau, The Hockey Lifers. Why don't you tell us a bit about it since we bring up Budreau?
Been talking about it for a while. This one all coming together. When as you sort of make a list of people that you want to work with in your career, and I've known Gabby for 20 30 years. He's always been right up around the top, and this one just sort of came together. He's already working at Monumental, as you guys all know, with the Washington Capitals, and this one was a 2-foot putt. This one was a layup. Hey, do you want to do a podcast with Gabby? It's a pretty quick yes. It's gonna be once a week, video pod. More information to follow, but big announcement yesterday, and spent a couple of days in Washington. Went to that Washington-Vancouver game, so it was up in Popcorn Row, and Tom Wilson caught Philip Hedl, which is kind of sparked debates all over the NHL. Happy to get it going. Starts next Monday, and it'll be every Monday for the rest of our lives.
Let's talk a little Washington Capitals. Since you were out there, you had Spencer Carberry on the sheet the other day. And one thing that I've kind of been wondering, I think it's kind of the big question about the Capitals coming into the year was, is there going to be any sort of an emotional letdown? Because you don't have the OV goal chase this year and sort of that big goal to push for. Did Carberry touch on that at all? How is he handling that as the bench boss?
It's interesting. We didn't so much talk about Ovechkin as much as we talked about another veteran player, and that's John Carlson. Like, you look at Alexander Ovechkin, is this going to be, the end of his career in the NHL? Actually, for the podcast next week, Gabby and I sat down with Ovechkin yesterday and talked to him, and that's obviously one of the questions, and he still maintains that he hasn't made any decisions, either yes or either no. I did ask him if he would still be interested in playing for Dynamo, as he talked about early in his career before he retires, go and play 1 year. And he said, I've thought about maybe playing a few games, but we're nowhere close to that decision just yet. I think when you have someone like Ovechkin or like John Carlson, who are closer to the end than the beginning, you have to handle them in a very specific way and a very respectful way. We've all seen players exit awkwardly and it hurts the organization for a long time. So Tyler, I know exactly where you're going with on this one, and there is that sensitivity. But he's still chasing 900. He's 2 goals away from that, so that's still a motivation. I think that when you look at, like, I've always looked at Ovechkin this one very specific way, and he's never made 20% of the salary cap. But if you look at one player who's been worth as much as Ovechkin has to the Washington Capitals, not just the team and winning the cup and all that, but I'm talking about filling the building. I'm talking about taking a brand that was in the dumps and turning it into what the Washington Capitals brand is now, and what that represents in the NHL and even outside of the NHL, just in sports in general. He may be the most, or at least one of the most undercompensated players in the history of the game. How do you put a price tag on someone that's helped bring an organization to the point where it's worth $2 billion? You guys can recall what it was like before they drafted Ovechkin. I mean, you had Jágr on this team, and Jágr wouldn't even do line rushes in warm-up. Like, it was terrible. Right? It was awful. Like, Hutz, you remember this, right? Like, it was, I'm not making this up. Like, it was terrible there. And almost single-handedly coming out of the lockout, 04-05, Alex Ovechkin captured the imagination, not just of Caps fans, but hockey fans everywhere, and reinforced and helped to grow that Washington Capitals brand. I don't know how you would even begin to try to put a price tag on it. And you could say the same thing about Sidney Crosby, because the Pens were in the dumps too before he came along. I don't know how much money Ovechkin's left on the table, but it's in the multi millions when you consider how much that team is worth now.
Yeah, it's the first thing I thought of, Jeff, is like him and Crosby, what they did for the game in general, right? Not just those cities alone. Like, in a time where hockey was stuttering a little bit, we didn't know what was going on. And when you talk about the Washington, I think back to the Olaf Kolzig days. That was the only chance they had in the game. He had to make 60 saves a game to keep anything. So that's what I grew up watching, Ole the goalie, right? So, but speaking of goalies, right? The Sabres dropped another one last night. What's the plan with Devon Levi? Like, I need to know. Like, I'm a Sabres goalie guy.
Holy jeez.
Like, what's the plan?
I wish I had the answer for you. I would have to think that Levi is pretty frustrated right now, looking at, who the Buffalo Sabres are, doing their ride or die with here with the net minding. And we'll see about Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. I think it's interesting that, if he has to go to any type of, conditioning assignment in the American Hockey League, with Levi and Georgiev there, you're going to have like 3 goaltenders in the American League on one way. Like, I think it's a crowded crease already. Throw Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen gobbling up games as well. I wish I knew what the plan was, because I was under the impression that the plan this season, and this goes back to July, the plan was going to be Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and Devon Levi. And it was going to be, Levi, it's not a 50-50 split, but he starts to make that climb to becoming the number 1 starter with the Buffalo Sabres. But then, Alex Lyon is in front of him. And then here comes Colton Ellis on waivers, and he gets placed in front of him. I know we're talking a lot about, what's the future of players like Tage Thompson and Alex Tuck, but I'm really glad you brought this up, because I think this is potentially a major situation for the Buffalo Sabres as well. And don't forget, this was one of Kevin Adams' signature moves. Like, he was a big piece of the Reinhart trade, right? Like, that was a massive piece, and you can argue about how they brought him in and how, it was, you can just bluntly say it was mishandled. Goaltenders from college don't go right into the National Hockey League. Go look at the history of the NHL. It does not happen. That is one of the hardest positions to make that transition from either junior or college. You need time, Hutz, as you know, in the American Hockey League. And they wanted to fast forward this, and here's the red carpet and all these starts. And now he finds himself in the American Hockey League as a really good goaltender. And if you're Devon Levi, you're saying, how many times can I be blocked here before I can actually start my career in the NHL? I don't think that he's asked out, but if we're sort of piling up the question marks about players and their future with the Buffalo Sabres, I think that Devon Levi's got to be a big piece of the conversation, Hutz. I really do. I'm curious what you think about it, but that's the way I see it from my little, Timu goalie corner.
Yeah. Again, I think there's a confidence factor involved in it, and it takes some time. It takes, some nurturing, but I just think the way the whole thing has gone down has just been so ugly. So it's been a tricky situation in Buffalo. You see them my concern is you have Alex Lyon playing ahead of him. And what does that do to his psyche in the sense of, It's different if UPL is the guy, but you have Alex Lyon, a guy you brought in on like a minimum deal who is like a career backup. Now, all of a sudden, you're telling me, like, I can't even play over Alex Lyon. I think that is just his time is running thin there, in my opinion, Jeff.
I don't disagree with you. I think that there's an excellent goaltender there. I have questions about a lot of the positions with the Buffalo Sabres right now, and they can't get stuck out of that status of just being a team with tons of potential. Like the Buffalo Sabres, and again, like the ultimate story, hey, I'm going to refute myself here, but the ultimate story of the Buffalo Sabres has been, in this generation, rushing players to the NHL too quickly. Like when the book is written on this era of the Sabres, it's going to be like, how many guys did they rush to the NHL? And there is a sweet spot there. But I think for Devon Levi, I think it's the time now where you're saying to yourself, okay, he needs to be an NHL goaltender by this. Like essentially what I'm asking is, how many times can you false start a goaltender until that goaltender, Hutz, to your point, says, maybe the problem is me, or maybe I just need to get out of here?
Yeah, I agree.
Jeff, there's one more I want to throw your way, and I'm interested to see people in the YouTube chat as well, their answers to this one. We were talking a little bit last week about like the grace period for rebuilds and how like fan bases will put up with it for a little bit and then the clock starts to tick. So my hypothetical to you, if you were to ask all 32 fan bases, you can either make the playoffs as the 8th seed this year, or you can guarantee that your franchise gets the best odds to draft Gavin McKenna. Not guarantee McKenna, but guarantee that last place spot. How many fan bases take the odds for McKenna over a playoff berth this year? Who's still in the good graces of their rebuild?
First off, the song remains the same. Every fan base says, yeah, we can handle this and we're patient and we can go through it. And it lasts 1 year. It lasts one season. And then and we've seen it, whether it's, Montreal and Philadelphia. Like we've seen this over at San Jose, Chicago. We've seen this over and over again. I mean, if you're the Calgary Flames dropped a tough one to the Winnipeg Jets last night. They play the Winnipeg Jets again this week, and they also, who else does Calgary play this week? They got the Jets, and they got Montreal. They got the Jets and the Montreal Canadiens, one of the hottest teams in the NHL, one of the most explosive teams in the NHL. Not sure if you saw Demidov dancing all over the Buffalo Sabres yesterday, but boy, was that a thing of beauty. I don't want to say that this could be the season this week for the Calgary Flames, but it kind of feels that way. They lose again to the Winnipeg Jets, which we can all see. They lose to the Montreal Canadiens, which we can all see. And then next week it's New York and Toronto and one more. Like, could the season be done by the time we get to November for the Calgary Flames? And the other thing to remember about Calgary is, and Elliot was on with the Morning Cup of Hockey guys this morning talking about, now is a time where you wonder about the veterans, you wonder about Huberdeau, you wonder about Kadri, you wonder about Rasmus Andersson going through something like this at their stage in their career. One thing to consider as well, the Calgary Flames moved from Atlanta, a little history lesson, folks. Calgary Flames moved from Atlanta in 1980. Since then, they've only had one pick in the top 4, and that was Sam Bennett in 2012. They've never had a top 3 pick in the National Hockey League. If there's a year to go for it with a new building on the horizon, to run backwards into the draft and the lottery, this would have to be it for the Calgary Flames, no? Like, this seemed like it's not there. It's not happening. I wonder if the rest of the week and the beginning of next week really goes a long way to wipe out the season for the Flames. And if so, there's a big reward at the end. I always think of the Sam Kinison line. And this is true in life too, gentlemen. Or should I should say that quieter? Guys, this is true in life too. If you're going to miss heaven, don't miss it by 2 inches. If you're going to miss heaven, don't miss it. If you're going to miss, there's a reward at both ends. If you're going to miss, really miss, boys. Really miss.
Jeff, Hutz and I have about 8 working brain cells today, so we appreciate you popping on and giving us a real solid 15 minutes. You're coming up at 1 o'clock.
Sam Kinison lines.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, boys.
I've learned a couple of new lines today. I like that one from Jeff. And what was the one you taught me last night as we were walking into another bar, Huts? You said, this one more, and another. Yeah, that's got something to do with how I'm feeling today.
Yeah, that's what he said. We're going to have one more drink. I said, this one more, and another, and then we're headed home.
and to be fair, we stuck to that at least. Hashtag AskDFO. I have a little inside the room kind of question for you, Huts. The Oilers, Adam Henrique's playing his 1,000th game today. All the players showed up to the rink in like custom Rico racing shirts. In the locker room, whose responsibility is that to organize it?
Usually like one guy will grab it and run with it, or like a staff member or someone on the training staff. I have one of those shirts, Louis Sweetness Erickson, 1,000 games when I was playing in Arizona. So that's a gym shirt I still wear to this day. Louis Erickson Sweetness. What a beauty.
Speaking of racing, we're going to be out at a racetrack today with our friends at Hyundai and Genesis. So very excited for that. We're going to be ripping around in some, I think, pretty fast cars. So I'm excited to hit the track today with you, Huts. But let's get to our daily bets. They're brought to you by Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Coming off a day yesterday where once again Carter Hutton scooped up a big win, and Pat pops on the screen shaking his head. Tough day, Pat.
Oh, it has been super tough for me so far. And I mean, just to preface, if you're going to follow our bets, just look at my record. It speaks for itself. So maybe just keep that in mind.
All right, our picks for tonight. Hudson and I are actually going to be in attendance at the Leafs-Devils game tonight, so I'm keeping mine on that theme. I'm going to go with Matthew Knies, 3+ shots on net. You're getting it with a very juicy +160 payout, which is nice considering he's hit this in 4 of his last 5 games, and he missed last game. So I kind of like getting him on the bounce back at +160. So Matthew Knies, 3+ shots again, hitting 4 out of 5. Huts, what do you got?
You know what, for me, I'm staying on that topic. I think when I look at this team and what went on with Anthony Stolarz and the message that he's trying to send to this team, I'm taking the Maple Leafs money line. I think they bounce back. I think there's going to be a big response for their goalie, for their crowd, for their team. So Leafs money line here. Patty, what do you got to close us out here?
Well, I've got a long shot here a little bit because the Oilers have been down, but I'm down bad right now in my options. So I need a little bit of a win. This is my one last big shot, and then I'll start doing a little more smarter bets. But I'll take the Edmonton Oilers with the spread at -1.5. I feel like, at some point this team's got to turn around. So for now, that's what we got.
And I mean, that Oilers offense against a Senators team that is leaking goals against, 30 goals against in just 6 games. So I do like betting on the Oilers offense there, Pat. I'll give you some support on that. I'll ride with you. But those are our daily bets for Bet365. We will wrap up with a little bit of garbage time. And listen, Huts, there's probably some hockey fans in the chat who are sick of us talking baseball, but damn it, the Jays made the World Series. So I want to talk about it one more time. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. walking in with the Austin Matthews jersey ahead of Game 7. That was just a great way to kind of, again, put your you-know-what on the table and go, I'm not scared of no curses. I'll wear whatever the hell I want to wear to Game 7. Yeah,
and a lot of people touched on this too. It has the A on it. So this was before. This is a jersey. This is from his collection. This is a keepsake. So this is, and it just, we talked about this yesterday, Ty, like just the swagger. He doesn't care about curses. He's the man. He knew they were going to win, and that's what they did. So it was a pretty cool moment, I think, for Leafs fans and for Jays fans seeing that.
And then one more thing quickly, because we talked about it yesterday, all the Kraken players walking in with their Mariners jerseys. And I said, there's a lot of Southern Ontario boys on that Kraken team who are probably in their heads being like, go Jays. The Jays having some fun with that today. They tweeted to Kraken forward Shane Wright, between us, we know how much it hurt you to put that jersey on. Consider this an open invitation to throw the first pitch at a game next year. Love your Toronto Blue Jays. I like that they're having some fun with it.
I love it. Throwing a little bit of shade there toward the Kraken. And honestly, I love it, but for a lot of those players on that team, I'm sure it hurt to wear that jersey, but I feel they feel a lot better right now after the Jays are going to the World Series.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. All right, that is a wrap on today's edition of the show. Tomorrow, Irf Gaffar and Colby Cohen are sliding in to co-host because Hutz and I are flying home. David Penn, Yoda, and the Insider Notebook will be coming up as their big segment. So that'll be a good one. Jeff Marek's coming up in about 25 minutes with the sheet. So stay tuned right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. Have yourselves a good Tuesday, everybody. We'll be back here tomorrow at noon. Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on the sheet with Jeff Marek, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohen on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.